Thank you, Laura.
Right, so we missed what so Richard said is not on the recording, I don't believe, but
But
Oh, okay, I'll
Lynn
read
is
it.
taking word for word notes.
yay.
Bennett, you had expressed
Right.
interest in helping me with this, and Richard? Okay.
Yes, I would very much appreciate joining and helping Richard and assisting in any way possible.
Okay,
I think
Richard.
what we can do is, I can send you some information where to look, and we can get together. And I'm sure Sarah would be willing to either engage in a phone conference or a Zoom talk at some point when we're ready for her advice.
Okay. So I'm happy. Do you want to send that, and then we can meet later in the week?
Yeah, let me
Or-
look it over. I really haven't
Okay.
looked at the pages yet that she advised me to look at.
Okay.
And I'll send you the links and what I think is appropriate. There's,
Okay.
I
So
don't want
we'll
to make
wait.
it more complicated than it is.
We'll wait to hear from you then.
All right.
Thank you,
Any other
Richard.
questions? Any other questions?
Richard, thank you very much. I just wanted to say, just when you think you're out of it, they suck you right back in.
He
I'm
knew
still
he
waiting
wasn't
for
out
my-
of it.
I'm still waiting for my Secret Service protection, but that's okay.
I have a question related.
Go ahead, Michael.
Are you going to hold off on putting this thing out to bid until we have a clear sense of where this is going with SHPO and the historical designation?
Well, we're not quite ready to go out to bid at this point. I'm not sure when we will be, so we'll see where it lands.
That doesn't sound like a very definitive answer. Sorry, I just thought we'd wait until we decided whether the town was moving forward with the historical preservation proposal
Again,
before we
we'll
decided
meet
whether
with,
we were going to go out
we'll
to
meet
bid.
with SHPO and get a better understanding,
Okay,
and then make a decision.
okay.
I will say this, as I told you, Michael, and everybody knows, this is a process. I can't put a time or stamp on it or anything like that. It took us 4 months just to get the eligibility squared away. So we'll see. Yeah, whatever you guys want to do.
Okay. Richard, thank you very much for reaching out.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
guys. Have a
Richard.
good night.
Thank you, Richard.
Too.
I might stay on a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. So Maria-Elena, I'm going to give you, you had requested the topic of ARP funds.
Correct.
Do you have something you want to discuss on that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to make sure that Bennett was brought up to date. So I resent the letter from the Housing Committee and also CC'd everybody else on the board so that everyone could refresh themselves with the information that was given to us back in November. Has everyone had a chance to review that?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just bringing it up for myself also for reference. So with the information that was shared, is there any kind of anything else that you need from them, or is this sufficient information in order to start moving forward and allocating funds for some of these points that they've raised here? ARP fund utilization recommendations.
So Maria-Elena, can you just give me the date of the email that you're looking at? I just want to bring it up as well.
It had to be in the last week or so that I sent it to Bennett and I CC'd everybody else.
But you said you had it up. If you have it up, you would have a time and date stamp.
Oh, no, I don't have, on my phone, I have just the paperwork that I'm referring to. So the date, no, it would be, if you just want to look at, emails that were sent from me, and it's about the ARP funds.
Yep.
It's on February the 13th. It came in at 2:18 p.m.
Thank you, Bennett.
It was to me from Maria-Elena, and you were CC'd on it.
I see a couple. Sorry.
At 2:18 p.m., you were CC'd on this. It is ARP fund recommendations from Housing Committee to Woodstock Town Board.
Oh, I had a filter on. Sorry. That's why it wasn't coming up. I had a filter on.
And there's an attachment. And, 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 and,
Gotcha. Yeah, I had a filter on, that's why I didn't see it. I got it now.
So they break it down into 3 sections. The first one is to hire a land use engineer. Do you see that, Laura?
Well, I do have the attachment up.
Okay. And certainly, I mean, if you have additional questions, I don't know if Kirk is still on. Let me see if he's still on.
Maria-Elena, yes, I'm on.
You are? Okay, good. So obviously there are, if they have questions that I'm not, able to answer, I would want you to be able to
Mhm.
answer that. So,
Well, so Bill, what do you know about the ARP funds for 2022? When we'll get them? Do you have knowledge yet?
I believe that a check is going to get cut in June. We still have funds from last year, and while the board didn't commit to spending them on anything specific, the resolution I offered and what I would encourage is that, we would spend, I think there's $100,000 in 50,000 and 50,000 in there for housing initiatives. I'm going to need a little bit more concrete proposal. And actually, Maria-Elena, maybe we could task you with talking to the town engineer, because that first one could get pretty expensive, where we could potentially spend quite a bit of money just looking at sites without coming up with anything concrete. And we would have to take a look at the ARP funding guidelines to make sure. For instance, number 3, my understanding is we can't hire grant writers with the funding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So-
again,
so
I
the-
will say that there's some conflicting information, and there have been changes back and forth.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to point out, and this may get into our next discussion on the CEA, as everybody knows, the Housing Oversight Task Force is well underway to have some zoning law update, some proposed zoning law updates coming soon. And so the timing of getting somebody, number one, the timing of hiring a land use engineer might make a little more sense to do it in light of the proposed law, because what they do and how they approach things could be different. So I think there could be a timing, in my opinion, number one, the timing might make more sense to do it when we know what the new law being proposed looks like.
Bill,
Who was asking me a
it's
question?
Bennett.
Bennett.
I had a really great conversation with Susan Goldman about the ARP funds, and I would just suggest that if we could know more globally what funds are still available from the 2021 and what amounts are available for specific things, and then additionally what funds are available for 2022 and what things are earmarked specifically, then we might be able to make more informed choices as a town. While I really do, I appreciate the fact that the housing committee came forward last year and made this proposal. I think that we would all benefit from having a larger discussion with people in the community. I mean, I turn on that damn radio every day and I hear communities are having discussions about how to use their ARP funds, and I would like us to be one of those communities too. So I would just suggest that maybe if we could find out what we do have and if there are special ways to spend it for 21 and 22, that would be a really a really good start. And this being the first piece on the docket, I would certainly want to be considering it first.
Okay. I can pull those, that information up. We were slated to get $598,000 roughly. We have spent approximately 150 of what we got for 2021. And we did commit to spending for the infrastructure for the meeting room is probably going to run us roughly $15,000. So by the time we're done with that, we will have spent about 165. And that leaves us roughly $130,000. Those are rough numbers. With another just under $300,000 coming, I believe, in June, but I can get all that information tomorrow.
That sounds great. I think that's a really great positive way to begin thinking about a recommendation as you know, as insightful as this one, as to what then we could possibly use some of those funds for. That's great. Thank you. I look forward to seeing that.
You know, and I number one there, listen, I'm committed. I'd be happy to spend all the money on housing. It's, I've mentioned before, it's my number one priority. I don't need to fight for that, but that's a big priority for me, and I think it's one that's high on the list for the ARP funding. That said, I think we do need to be careful and try and narrow down so that we get, because we aren't, in the scheme of things, we're not talking about a huge pot of money. So with regard to number one, if we could narrow down a couple of projects, for instance, we've got that 35 acres in Xena that I've been talking about for a long time. And, you know, maybe if the board was agreeable, we could start to, you know, put the money into doing a site work plan for one specific piece of property. Kirk, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Bill. I just wanted to add to what Bennett was saying and echo his perspective here, that when we first made this list, we were intending it to be an opener for a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly was not our, you know, settled, this is what we want. It was more to create a conversation.
Right.
And so that's really where we were coming from. And then now here we are, and February 15th. So we're ready and willing to have that conversation with any group of people that you feel would be appropriate to have that with. And we welcome that as a committee.
Okay. So I think the board should continue to think about, you know, how they want to see that money spent, and do we want to narrow it down? Kirk, do you want to go back to the housing committee and maybe narrow down a project or two, or even recommend 3 different projects that we might focus on?
Well, we certainly can have that a conversation further, and we will bring back additional information if things have changed. And two, I like back, you know, I just feel like where can this money best be used?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is really where we're coming from. So we will have our ideas, and we can update what we've presented, you know, in last November. We can change that if we feel it's appropriate. And I will reach out to the committee tomorrow based on this conversation.
I think if we could narrow down a couple of projects, for instance, you and I have talked about those 2 parcels on Xena Highwoods Road that equal about 10 acres. You know, maybe even though it would be a small project, the best bang would be to put funding in there to make that builder ready, and put that out as an RFP or an RFQ for a developer.
Mm-hmm.
Bennett?
I would also just like to add that if there are other committees who would like to follow this really excellent, you know, plan and make recommendations as well, I think that we as a town should welcome those. If they believe that they could possibly, use some of the funds as well, I think we should listen as well to their thoughts. I mean, this is a one-time thing, and it's not recurring, and there are very important parameters for it. So it's not just stand in line and let's get some money. I think that this requires real thought, and so I would encourage others to do the same that the Housing Committee has done.
So Bennett, what I would just ask though, if you, in your travels, you talk to other committees or groups that might be interested, what I would suggest is have them contact me, and I can put it on the website or up on Facebook. There is a very short, brief document that outlines in very, very, very general terms how the money could be spent. And I think that at least would give everyone an idea of what we could do with it, and not have people chasing things that are just not feasible.
Is
I
that document
agree.
on the site?
Second,
Is that document on the site?
I don't know, but we'll get it up tomorrow.
Ashley,
yeah,
if
I
you
was gonna say, Bill, if we
point
just
that to
go and
me.
put that up, and then the committees could,
Yeah.
But
Okay,
as you're
and then reach
talking,
out
let
for
them know that
questions.
it's there.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Ashley.
Maria-Elena.
In addition to what we're talking about here, I just want to let you know that we're working on a budget for home share. And we'll, we were successful so far in raising about $35,000. Most of that was from the State Office for the Aging.
Mhm.
And we are looking for grants in addition to that. But what, other monies that we need coming in to cover, I have a whole list of a breakdown of, budget. So if we can share that with you and the board as well for the home share.
Well,
group.
do me a favor and send it to me tomorrow, and then I can start to look through the rules and regulations and see if this is something that meets the criteria.
Okay, yeah, that was the other question we were gonna ask, is what's the criteria? So, okay.
Well, that'll
Yeah.
be what the very, very basic criteria I'll put up on the website and Facebook tomorrow.
Okay, because I think Goldman would probably want to take a look at that, and then we could see where, what our needs are and where that fits. So, okay.
The other thing is that, so the town board did,
We got some time in there.
who's ever speaking, please mute yourself. Number two, one of the things that the town board, while we didn't commit to a specific thing, we said in general terms, we talked about having rent assistance or utility assistance available, which talks about number two. So that's another idea that we could do something along those lines. If you wanted to, if somebody wanted to step forward and work on how that program would be implemented. And if you want to talk more about that tomorrow, Maria-Elena, we could. So. Okay, anybody else have anything on ARP funding? Okay, then let me just shut this. All right, next up, CEA discussion. Bennett, you had asked for this, so I'll let you start us off.
I thank you, Bill. I appreciate time on the agenda to do this. I found out about the CEA when I began attending planning board meetings, and somebody mentioned it, and come to find out that this idea was brought up by the chair, Peter Cross, in a January meeting, and had possibly been discussed before that. The CEA was a possible tool. It's a critical environmental area. It's an advisory that planning boards can use when making decisions about developments that come before the planning board. And members of the WEC and the planning board got together and formed a group, a CEA working group, which the town was in support of and put a letter forward. They found a grant that did not cost money and began working with Hudsonia, and have spent the better part of 2021 putting together a proposal that would conform the CEA to the necessary steps that should be taken before it is considered. In November, they completed this this work and have been waiting to get on the agenda for scheduling a public hearing, which is the next step before them. I think that we should put this on the agenda for a public hearing, and I have heard proposals that the date be in late June. That is certainly a long way away, but I would be for putting it on the agenda anytime for a public hearing. I do believe that this is the necessary step and process, and I would like to hear from other board members about what they feel about the idea of putting this on for a June public hearing.
Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to, unless somebody else wants to.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. So first of all, I appreciate Bennett bringing this up, because Bennett bringing this up has generated a lot of conversation. So I've spent, it seems like all day today talking about it, and previous days talking about it, because it's got us all really thinking. And I've talked to several different people and gotten several different viewpoints. The thing about it is, my first take was, oh, the CEA was presented in November. Well, first of all, we do have a different board, and the board that we had back in December did recommend that the discussion of it wait until the Housing Oversight Task Force recommendations came forward. So we have a new board now, and we have a new look, and that's as it should be. You get a new board, you get a new look. So as I've had a lot of conversations with people, my first thought was, oh, the CEA is ready to go. Why not just go to the public hearing? But in the conversations that I've had with people, the question is it really ready to go? It was presented to us, but is it really ready to go? And by that, I mean, the planning board, as Bennett said, the idea is the planning board will use this as a tool. Well, we as a town board have not actually said to the planning board as a body, please review this and let us know, does it meet your needs as a tool? We also have the Housing Oversight Task Force. The CEA talks about land use, and it talks about land use in the critical environmental area defined. The Housing Oversight Task Force is also putting together laws that have to do with land use. Two very important things. The June date, in theory, oh, that's great, because we get the Housing Oversight Task Force laws proposals out by then. We're all reviewing them then. Late June for CEA sounds good. My concern is, I think we have some to-dos to do before we hold the public hearing. And the to-dos that I think we have to do are have the planning board take a look, and as a body say, is this the tool that matches what you need? I believe that we as a town board should ask the Housing Oversight Task Force specifically to take a look at the critical environmental area document and say, how does it fit in with the laws that are being created? And I know that the leaders of the Housing Oversight Task Force have sent it to the consultant who is drafting these laws. So that work is going on. But I think that there ought to be a piece of work once the Housing Oversight Task Force proposed laws come forth. Everything ought to be in context. And so there ought to be, I think, a work item that says, what does the CEA say? It has a page and a half of recommendations. the Housing Oversight Task Force is codifying things, putting laws in place. And some of the CEA things are common sense that belong in that. I think we ought to take a look at where the gaps are. We have the Housing Oversight Task Force codification that affects all of Woodstock. And then we have the CEA, and how do the two things fit together? We can't possibly today know how those two documents fit together. And I am a little worried. I'm okay with setting a target date. People get tired of hearing me say I'm a professional project manager, but I am. They've heard me say it 500 times. As a professional project manager, I will give a target date easily. I will give a committed date only after being really, really sure. I think a target date of June is fine. I'm worried about it as a committed date because I do think we should hear from the planning board. Does the CEA document match what it needs? I do think that we should have some analysis done of the CEA in comparison with the Housing Oversight Task Force code. Does it all fit together, or is it a mismatch? Can all that be done by June? Maybe, but I think that we should focus on what the next steps are and say that's a good target is the end of June, but I think we should focus on the steps. The other thing that was late breaking news today is I was surprised to learn, as were other people, that Woodstock actually already has CEAs. And our CEA document being proposed doesn't actually make any mention of those. So I do think that we might want to give some thought of whether or not the CEA document being proposed at least says something about there's other CEAs. They're apparently in areas covered by the wetland and water course, but that's another piece. The other piece that didn't happen yet was talking to property owners. Maybe it did happen, maybe I just don't know it. But talking to property owners that are in this proposed CEA area to find out, do they have issues? I know in the public hearing, everybody can come forward, but the people most affected are the people that live there. And that hasn't happened yet either. There's also an open question, as I understand it, of if you do live in that, and now your property's in a critical environmental area, and if you want to do a project, secret type 2 is easy. You just check a box, no impact, you're done. Secret type 1 is a big deal. Did we just make all those property owners have to go through a secret type 1? We know the CEA is guidelines, it's not rules, but there's a secret question of what is the impact? So I see there are a lot of questions coming up, and I'm okay with a target date of June. I'm concerned about a committed date of June because I think I'm realizing, and again, I thank Bennett for bringing this up. That's how all these conversations happen and how I became aware of all these worries and issues that people have. It's because of this coming up and becoming a hot topic. But I do see us as having some next steps that we do need to do. I do think there's some homework. Some of those things I just mentioned are homework I think need to get done.
Thank you, Laura. Reggie or Maria-Elena, either of you want to go next?
Can we open
Yeah,
it
I was
up?
say, oh,
Okay,
sorry.
go.
Oh, sorry. No, one of the things I think is most important that I want to see happen is for these committees to come together and collaborate. So I'd like to see the conversation. It started last year, but then it was dropped. I'd like to revive that and have everyone come together, because the only way that we can figure out any issues is if everybody comes to the table and talks. So I really encourage these committees to come together, like sooner than later, so that this way, all of the things that Laura is talking about, things that she feels, are issues that are not resolved yet, perhaps we'll get some resolution if people come together. So.
Okay, thank you, Maria-Elena. Reggie?
Quickly, could we have anyone speak to some of the things that Laura brought up, or is this just amongst us, or can we open it up a little bit?
Well, let's go through the board first, and then we can go out.
Okay, so yeah, quickly. So same, I'd like to see, I appreciate everybody in town that really decides to volunteer and make a commitment to work for our town or to help our town. As Laura said, I think all of us today have been on the phone, plenty involved with this topic. I would like to see us try to move forward. I do understand the ask or the need for DEC to move forward. Did I say DEC? I'm sorry, I meant to say WEC. And I also want to be mindful of some of the concerns that Housing Oversight has also. So certainly not against certainly pro-environment and in favor of those folks that are committing to work on this issue. And certainly I really care and feel strongly about the need for affordable housing. And I would like to see, you know, how can we move forward together as much as possible to address both of those issues.
Thank you, Reggie. So first off, I want to thank Alex and the rest of the WEC for the great job, as well as the planning board for the great job they did in putting this document together. I think that everybody on the town board is in favor of moving forward. I know that I've asked for a little bit of time. I think a June public hearing is something that's absolutely doable. And I agree with Laura that I think there are a few things that we should polish up on. One of the items, I did talk to the secretary for the planning board, and I know she's got some questions about how this would all be really implemented from a planning board perspective, kind of how they would view an application when it came through. So one of the things I would ask is the WEC sit down with the planning board and maybe, you know, in anticipation of this public hearing, we kind of flesh out, you know, what does this look like to an applicant? What does this look like to the planning board? The other thing is that I would like to see that the Housing Oversight Committee and the WEC sit down. I'm told, and they sound really confident, that within the next 4 weeks or so, the Oversight Committee will be coming forward with some draft recommendations, and that would be a great time to look at both documents and kind of make sure everything meshes. It's my understanding that the Oversight Committee has really taken the concept, the CEA concepts, policies, and guidelines to heart and are implementing those in their recommendations. And, you know, I don't see her on here, Deborah Dewan. I mean, she's been working as an environmentalist for eons. So, you know, I feel very confident in having her as co-chair with Kirk of the Housing Oversight Committee, and knowing that the environment is not getting short-shifted in the policies they'll be coming forward with. Laura also mentioned the neighbors, and I actually this evening got a couple of calls, 2 calls from some of the neighbors down there who were a little irate that there had been no public outreach to them. So I think that's another thing prior to the public hearing over the next month or two. Perhaps we could plan to have a firehouse meeting down in Xena and invite, there isn't that long a list, we could put together a mailer and invite the landowners who are most affected by this to come out and get a clear understanding. And maybe, Alex, you could, you know, we could set up and you could do the presentation so that they understood that this isn't, you know, something that's going to prohibit development, but help guide it and make it sensible and sustainable. So with that,
I have a
any
quick
members of the various boards want to address any of what's been discussed?
Well, Bill,
Yes.
we would love to talk to as many people about this as want to listen.
Great.
From just what I'm hearing tonight, I get the sense that perhaps even some of the people here don't fully understand what the CEA means and how it would work in practice. And so I think perhaps we can offer to also discuss that with you guys a bit further. I know you've had a couple of presentations about it, but what I'm hearing in terms of questions is kind of letting me know that there is still a big gap of kind of knowledge of what the perception is and what the reality is. And we would love to make sure that gets cleared up so that obviously the town board is a ways away no matter what from voting on whether you would want this to be adopted, because it would go through the public outreach, the secret process, and then the vote.
Mhm.
And we want to make sure that you know what you're voting on
Yeah,
and what we're talking about, especially. So we have that information. We have it in a really easy to understand format. We have it in a less easy to understand format. You've all read the document, I'm sure.
mhm.
So I don't know if it would be helpful to have some other sit down where we can spell it out a little bit more, because what I am here, you know, some of these questions are answered really simply by us, or even by Gretchen, or by anyone on the working group. It's because it's a state designated thing. There are some specific answers that are unchangeable
Regardless.
So how it works with the planning board doesn't have to do with what the planning board wants or what we want or what you want. It's the law of how this kind of designation works. So there are some answers that exist that are pretty easy to give if we knew what all the questions looked like as well. And that is part of what the public outreach process is about.
Mhm. So you and I briefly talked, we had a lengthy conversation today, but we briefly talked about the possibility of doing a quick presentation here. But now I'm thinking the smartest play is if I put you on the agenda. Let me look at my calendar. March 8th is the next town board meeting, and what we could do is advertise this as a tutorial on CEAs and invite the public and invite the neighbors to all come out, and you could do a presentation. In the meantime, between now and say a couple days before that meeting, anyone who has specific questions could get them to the WEC so that you guys could prepare and come back and have a really rational, clear conversation. In the meantime, I know that the Housing Oversight Committee will be almost ready to drop their draft. So I know it's a stretch. I doubt they'll be ready to talk about it in great length, but maybe they can even offer some things at that point. So does the board, that comfortable with the rest of the board? I'll get to you in a minute, Max.
Thanks. Well, I'm comfortable. I lost track. Were we going? You said we are going to invite the neighbors to the March 8th session, so the neighbors can.
I will put out to all the neighbors. We'll develop a list. Alex, maybe you could help me with that. We'll put together a list that we could contact them and let them know. You know, we can put an advertisement up on Facebook. I can contact the bigger landowners so that they're aware, and I'm sure word will spread. But we'll bill it as a tutorial on what a CEA means, what it will do, what it won't do, and what folks will be able to do and not do with their property.
Okay, and I do think that it would be good to invite the planning board and the Housing Oversight Task Force to that as well, because all these groups and the collaboration that I know I talked about it and Maria-Elena talked about it and others did as well, because that would be a nice start to the collaboration to have those different groups who we can name, who we know are going to be most interested in this. So planning board, Housing Oversight Task Force, and I can also invite the Zoning Revision Committee, because I think that they also have a interest, and the neighbors. If we have that group all invited, I think that'll be great. And then we can have sub meetings afterwards to resolve any individual concerns the different groups have. Excellent.
And I think it would be helpful if Alex and a couple of WEC members maybe sat down with the Housing Oversight and had, a conversation about what each was working on, and, fill in each a little bit to help solidify all that. I'll be honest, one of the things I'm worried about is that I don't see this as a conflict. I see a CEA and housing regulations going hand in hand. I don't see them as crossing each other out. Not sure that everybody sees it that clearly. I probably most of the people here do, but I want to make sure that the general public has that understanding. Because I have experience in the past where well-intentioned people might say, oh, well, I can't tell you how many times I heard about housing, affordable housing. We're all for it. It's just not the right place. And I want to make sure that we, you know, when we roll out these different concepts, that people get that they go hand in hand, that you can have one and the other and they don't exclude each other. So, you know, that's one of the messages that I really want to get home to folks. So
We actually have a really good example here in Woodstock of some affordable housing that is in a CEA, which is behind the Playhouse. It overlaps with a CEA that was designated in the 90s. And if you take a look at what it looks like, you can see how the way that it was built really does avoid the, you know, important elements. It's kind of clustered in a grate on one road. And then you have your CEA right there. So you have both things coexisting very peacefully. And I think we all would love to be able to share with the community the ways that we can make these things work together here in the community.
I just don't want to give up any more blood, sweat, and tears, right, Susan?
Sometimes when people say it's the wrong place, they just mean they don't want it anywhere near where they are.
Bill, you do have some hands up. I see.
Yes, I just call Max.
Hi, all. So as everyone I think knows, I'm not the current ED at the Woodstock Land Conservancy, but when I was the ED, I was also on this committee. The WLC participated, and Melissa Peterson joined, staff person at WLC also joined the effort. Keep in mind that we were, this was something that came, as Alex said, through a request from the planning board, and I think it's born of the town's great commitment for the many years and as supported by the public to environmental considerations about our town. And so with the great pressures of development that have happened in the recent few years, I think the interest was to see how the CEA might help guide future development in certain designated places in Woodstock. Just a reminder, and it was said already, that it's a non-binding set of considerations. The idea is for it to give those who are interested in developing a property thoughtful considerations to make the best site plan that both might come out with the development, but take care of and consider the environmental resources. As Alex was just saying, you know, making a smart site plan instead of just, you know, throwing it all over the place. And Bill, I think, is right in saying that this effort is quite compatible with what the Housing Committee is pursuing as well, and I don't think should be seen in any way oppositionally. So, and then the last thing that I wanted to remind, and we really need to, we did get, Alex can explain, the WEC got a grant for Hudsonia and DEC to advise us, and we had excellent professional guidance in doing so with Gretchen Stevens and with Ingrid Heckel and Nate Nardi Cyrus. So, it was a year-long, approximate year-long process. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is I do believe the town has a recorded presentation, and maybe Alex can remember, in prior meetings, I think we did do a presentation and Gretchen did speak about what was being planned with the CEA designation. So the town has that maybe available to even pop up tomorrow onto the website or wherever on Facebook.
Max, it's actually on the WEC. It's linked on the WEC page on the town website. So it's possible to move it to the main page as well. But the link to Gretchen's presentation and the document itself are both at the top of the WEC page on the town website.
And so I think it'd probably be a good refresher for those who've already seen it, and for those who haven't seen it, that's your primer on it.
Thank you, Max. And I forget the date. It was the Tuesday. It was either November 9th or 10th. So if you do Google the town board meeting, it was one of those dates. Jeff Collins, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Bill. I just want to say, admit that I'm coming from this from two different points of view. One is as a member of the Housing Oversight Task Force. The point of view from Housing Oversight Task Force is that everything that is being said that is trying to be accomplished by the CEA is exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the Housing Oversight Task Force as well. Trying to make it very clear what development can be done in every area of Woodstock, how that development can be managed within the environment, how it can protect the environment. So those things are very, very consistent. And to me, it seems like having two things going to try to do the same thing is a mistake instead of having one thing doing it themselves. So that's where I think that we need to get together and have this worked out together as a single consistent plan. The other area that I come from is I'm one of the largest landowners in the area that's designated for the CEA. So from that point of view, my first question is why? What is it about that particular part of Woodstock that is so much more valuable, so much more critical than any other part of Woodstock? Because if I don't see it as an owner of that land, and maybe I'm missing something. So I don't have to understand what that is, first of all. And the other part of that is I feel personally a little bit upset that someone wants to designate my land as CEA without having talked to me or brought it to me before it comes up to this point in the process. I think that should have been something done early on. So just pointing that out, this is a significant impact on my ownership of that land. And not just me, but everyone else too. So again, it's not about me, it's about the town here. But we do have to understand that there are individuals that are impacted by this, and that impact is not minimal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Kirk, you had something you wanted to say?
But Judy's had her hand up forever.
I have a list, Laura.
Okay.
Kirk?
Well, I just wanted to say that I welcome as the co-chair of the Housing Oversight Committee and the Housing Committee as well, co-chair. We welcome a dialogue being open with the WEC and with Alex and crew, and look forward to working on how your proposal integrates well with the new proposed code. And I think that's where the details are. Alex, I think you would know that, and so it's how it interfaces with the new code that will be coming. And we will work also with Nan and our consultant and her advice that brings to bear this matter. And if there's any ways in which we could gain insight from her, I'm sure she'll provide it. So I just wanted to extend that my offer to work with you, and I look forward for when that can happen.
Kirk, can we start sending someone to one of your meetings? So that we have.
Let's Alex, let's just you and I talk, and we can plan that out, because we can go over the schedule, we can go over what we're doing, and then I'll bring you up to date, and then we can go from there.
That would be great. Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Judy, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Bill. Yes. When I first heard that there were concerns about bringing the WEC forward, I didn't quite understand them. And I have since come to understand that there are groups that could use to be consulted. And having the time until perhaps June makes sense to me. I think having the Housing Oversight Task Force proposals available within that time frame makes sense. I didn't understand that it was going to be quite that long. I mean, the possible public hearing, if there's one. But clearly there are other issues, such as consultation with landowners, that are worth doing so that everything can get integrated. Because I don't think these things, being on both committees, it never occurred to me that those two things were in conflict with each other. We've been talking about it as being integrated from the beginning.
Right.
So making sure that all the education that needs to get made is taken care of is essential.
Thank you, Judy. You know, I'll add one thing. I've made no bones. The housing crisis has been my #1 priority in town for years. I've run on it. I've campaigned on it. And that doesn't mean that I don't take seriously maintaining our environment. I mean, I look back today at the number of things we've achieved since I first got elected, and there are a lot of good things. So I'm able to focus on the housing because I feel comfortable, not that we can't continue to do an even better job, but that Woodstock has always looked out for the environment, and there are a lot of folks doing that. And again, it's not that I think they exclude each other. We just have to make sure that everyone, the public, understands that they fit together really well. And I think this group here, all these faces I'm looking at right now, I think we're all going to be marching off in the same direction, because really we all want the same thing. So did I have anybody else? I think that was it. So I'll go back.
So Bill, because we, just for our schedule then, are you still thinking of doing this March 8th, the date, so we know to be prepared?
So what I would ask everybody to do is, if there are any questions, issues, concerns that you want the WEC to address on March 8th, talk to them. Talk to Alex or another member of the WEC and give them a couple of days. So hold on, let me look at the schedule. So March 4th is a Friday. I would say, in fairness to the WEC, have your questions to them by March 4th, so that they can, come on the 8th and speak intelligently to this. I'll work with you, Alex, to put together a list of the property owners and reach out and contact them. And put, we can put it out on Facebook and put it up on the website, that this is going to be a discussion and this is the opportunity. And maybe this will suffice, if we can get enough of them to come, this might suffice instead of having a meeting down there. Short of that, it might not be a bad idea to take this act on the road, and we could even do it that week, go down to Xena, to the firehouse, and, put a presentation on. Sometimes folks feel a little bit more comfortable when they're in their backyard. But we can play that by ear and see what kind of turnout we get. One of the other folks that I did get a call from that would, I think, be interested is the City of Kingston, the water department. Judith was caught off guard. And again, I don't think that any of this is something that they would necessarily come out and oppose, but I think if they understood it, they would be more supportive. So I'm excited. This is good. This has been a good dialogue, and I see a path forward
Bill,
for all of us.
Sorry to interrupt. Just Deborah had her hand up. She didn't have, Can we hear from
Deborah Dewan?
Hi,
Where are you, Deborah?
I'm here. I'm up in
there
the
you are, right
corner,
in
the
front
little
of me.
box over in the corner. So I'm just really glad that this conversation is happening and that there's a lot of, I think that communication amongst us as all part of this community is essential. I think what Jeff said about the what we're working on in the Housing Oversight Task Force is going to fit really well and integrate really well with the CEA. And we did pass along, Alex, all those documents to the consultant, and we asked for her input. So I think that's a really great start. We consider this, part and parcel of our work is protecting the environment as well as providing housing for people. It's the only way Woodstock can do it, and we should do it. And so I welcome this dialogue as well, and Kirk and I will coordinate however we can moving forward. I just wanted to say that we really are close to having a draft code. It's a big lift. It's a lot of work. It's been a lot to this point, and then we're going to have to really do a deep dive into language and then sharing it with all the boards and committees, including the WEC and the planning board for feedback and the town board. So I think we're just wanting to do it in the right way and to be as inclusive as we can in this process as we go forward. Thanks.
Deborah, I just want to say a personal thank you. You and I have spent, and I know other people are working very hard on this, but you and I have spent hours on the phone talking about this issue over the last few months. And I can't think of a better person to really straddle both the housing issue and the environmental issue. So, you know,
Thank you, Bill.
thank everybody for stepping up. You know,
Everybody's been amazing. We have everybody, I really do mean this, every committee. I've spent more time on Zoom meetings in the last year. And I just see an incredible amount of passion and commitment, dedication from everybody in this town. And that's why I'm so confident we can do this together.
Thank you. Urain, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to, you know, I'm on the housing committee and started with Susan and Kirk and Deborah from the beginning 3 years ago in 2019. And I just want to say, like, from the beginning, when we were doing our research and information campaign, I know that we had Maxanne come and talk to us. We began that relationship, but also, I mean, even when we were doing research, you could back me up, Deborah and Susan, I was looking through NYSERDA and we were talking about smart code. And then we had the gentleman down the road, I'm blanking out on his name, who has a passive, 100% passive house. I met with him for 5 hours. He came to talk with us. I mean, we've been talking about, and then we did the cafe with Woodstock Land Conservancy this past summer. We have from the beginning been talking about possibly, I mean, I kind of put a word out there as I remember talking about, could we be the first town in the state to have all of our housing that's affordable for all Woodstockers be green and passive and green, you know, and zero emissions. So we've been talking about it from the beginning and been talking about it with other community committee members as well. So anyway, and we don't think of it as something that's separate. We think of it as something work together. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation, makes it so that maybe we will be in the future talking together as committees and kind of working towards the same direction respectfully.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move on now. I thank everybody for coming out. So the game plan is on March 8th. I will have on the agenda the presentation by the WEC. In the meantime, we'll reach out to the property owners, Alex, and make sure they're aware that that's a perfect time for them to come. And then we can make an assessment if we want to move forward. And then there can be conversations with both the planning board about practical implementation and with the housing committee, with you and Kirk, if you could get the ball rolling and start dialogue, that would be fantastic. So thank you all. Great conversation.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Alex, Wes,
Thank you.
Housing,
And
Oversight.
Alex, thank you again to the entire WEC and the planning board for bringing this forward.
And Bill,
And
just quickly,
don't
I'm
forget
sorry.
Max and the Land Conservancy.
Land Conservancy too. Yes. Nice plug there.
And
Thank
just
you,
quickly,
Kevin.
again, Bill, just thank you to everybody. Like, it's been very obvious. I mean, we already knew this, but just in the past 24, 48 hours, you know, we do have great people that really do care. Let's remember, like, let's work towards like greater good for all of us. Let's try to work with each other and communicate, be respectful of each other, and just move forward.
Mhm.
So looking
Well,
forward to
Yay.
that.
This was a great start. Okay, with that, I'm going to roll into some resolutions. Let me just do the ones I hand wrote first so that I don't forget them. Be it resolved to appoint Jude Salato to the Zoning Revision Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Be it resolved to appoint Allison Blank to the Housing Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to appoint Kate Hagerman to the WEC, term to expire 12/31/22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so those are all, oh, wait a second now, I goofed here. Hold on one second. Lynn had to go home. So who seconded Jude Stellatos?
Laura.
Laura, okay.
And I seconded Kate.
Kate, you
I
seconded?
took
Kate?
them down, Bill, if you want me to.
You did?
I took
Okay.
them down. Yep.
Okay, so just let me get the rest of them then. So be it resolved to accept minutes for meeting held on February 8th.
Second, and I made one comment on it, so I know Lynn is there. I made one comment on the
I will
markup.
let her know.
Oh, that's right, you
uh,
said she left.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Be it resolved to accept the town clerk's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to authorize payment of audited vouchers in the amount of $1,569,919.56.
Second.
That was Bennett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's a boatload of money. Just for the public, we have to satisfy the tax warrants for both the library and the fire department. So the town clerk gets all the tax money, and when that comes in and we have enough to cover the bill, we send out money. So Jeff, your check is in the mail. Where was I? Be it resolved to authorize transfers per transfer sheet.
Second.
Second, Reggie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And John Ludwig sent us an email about our policy. And so John, for the transfer sheets, they do get attached to the minutes. These transfers are within the 2022, or whatever year it is, within the budget. It's not specific to fund balance. When we do the fund balance, and I can dig up the resolution tomorrow sometime, the fund balance, when we do those transfers, it's very specific, dollar and where it's going, and it is part of the resolution. So be it resolved to authorize the negotiating team of Supervisor Bill McKenna and Councilman Bennett Radcliffe to sign the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Woodstock and the Communication Workers of America, CWA Local 1120. So I believe Ashley forwarded you that document. Any question, or do I have a second?
Second.
Bennett? And any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so everything passed 5-0. I'm just taking notes. Let me just write that down. So public be heard. Michael, did you have anything?
Yeah, I had two things, Bill. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of David Gross. He was a very serious environmentalist, and we had our differences, but I think he was a wonderful fellow. And I'd like to add his name to the list of people who have passed away that are deserving of a memorial tree planting in the town of Woodstock as the chair of the tree committee. I also want to mention that I've been getting numerous emails and phone calls about the clear cutting out in Bearsville. And I've reviewed the site plan that was passed by the planning board. And I just wanted to give the board, the town board, a heads up that it appears the cutting has grossly overstepped the site plan. And I don't know what happened there. I'm still out of town. I'll be back soon to visit the site myself, but I've seen a lot of photos and I've reviewed the site plan. I think there's a problem there. I'm not 100% sure, but I continue to get calls and emails about it. People are very concerned and very upset, and I just wanted to share that with the board. It's an ongoing situation.
Thank you, Michael. So I'll just follow up with that. I did talk to Butch and Ellen the other day. They're pretty confident. Butch was going to go back and review further, but that the tree cutting was all within the confines of what the site plan, the approved site plan by the planning board had permitted. And there are plans on that site plan to replant a number of trees. So there were trees that came down. A lot of them were not healthy. And to my knowledge, none of them were protected trees that were within the acquired distance to Route 212.
Yeah, we're reviewing.
Hold on, don't
Okay.
interrupt. But,
I just wanted to respond to that.
okay, so if Butch does come back with anything, I'll apprise the board and the tree committee. But at this point, the feeling is there are no violations there. I'll keep everybody updated.
We're currently reviewing the tree law. There might be a different interpretation of the tree law. It may not be limited to trees within 20 feet of the road. Bill, you and I should have a discussion about this. The tree committee is going to meet next week. Bennett, I hope you can attend. We have to clear a few things up, especially when situations like this arise and such a dramatic, invisible and, I mean, people are legitimately upset. They want to know what's going on. So
thank you, Michael.
Fine. Thank you.
All right. Any more comment from the board?
Yes, I wanted to thank Michael for bringing up David Gross's passing. David, as liaison to the WEC, I admired David tremendously. He came off the WC voluntarily at the end of December, and I just wanted to say I hold him in very high esteem. His contribution to the WEC, his leadership to WEC, and he walked the walk. He didn't just talk the talk; he walked the walk. And I know by being liaison to the WEC and listening to David, my personal environmental conscientiousness and awareness and reuse and less, bring your own plate to an event. There's so many things that he did to live the environmental way. And I lament, as do many, David Gross passing it's a huge loss to Woodstock.
We didn't bring this up last week. The family appeared to want to keep it very quiet, but since somebody else brought it up, I'll mention I knew David for well over 20 years, worked with him as a town board member and supervisor. He was a gentleman. He had a great sense of humor and just really, really outstanding character who cared a lot for our community. He would be very missed. So, any other?
Bennett's waving.
I just wanted to give a real debt of gratitude to Pastor Carrie Pattison at the Dutch Reformed Church and her courage in standing up to a group of white supremacists who were on the green without authorization. She is an asset to our community, and she stood very tall with her dog and several others who were just passing by. I really think that she has quite the spirit of Woodstock and will not ignore the white supremacists that come into this town and try to disturb our peaceful days. But they are here, and I am glad that she is here too. And really wanted to give a shout out to her for the work she did.
I wanted to also add that I wanted to thank the Human Rights Commission because they, crafted this statement, but it's a statement that lets people know that we will not tolerate any form of hatred. So I'm really glad that they were able to have that opportunity.
Excellent. Any other comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'll move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great meeting, folks. Everybody have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Bennett, not right away, but at some point, I'll need you to come in and sign the MOU or MOA. So
I'll be there in the morning.
I won't be tomorrow. We need to get the document ready. It'll take a couple of days.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Bill.